attaching a coil to the lip of your bowl, your pinch pot. Use this video as your own personal demo. Play, then pause, do some work, then play, pause, and do some work, and so on and so on. I'm going to be referring to your check sheet. You might just be watching this because you need to add a coil to a pinch pot. As always, you need to check over your check sheet yourself and read each line. Step one for this, of course, is to make a coil. You do in a decent amount of clay. For more detail on a coil, watch the coil video. I'm going to speed this one up. Your goal is to make this coil double the thickness of your lip, which is probably 2 times the thickness of a pencil if your lip was done at 1/4 of an inch thick. If you remember watching the coil video and I talked about maybe your coil is flattened and it's not rolling smoothly and it's more ovular instead of round, I talked to you in class about doing what's called, I call the pretzel technique. That's why I kind of twisted it up. If I gently roll on that twisted coil, it kind of evens out the clay and I get this nice round coil again. What's my goal is I want it to wrap around the circumference of that lip. So I had to roll a little bit more. However, make sure that your coil doesn't get too skinny. There I go. I do have a slight overlap. That's perfect. What you're going to see now is I'm going to go through this check sheet and make sure that I have accomplished each target and I am checking off each bullet. First I read them though, of course. If I've fulfilled the requirements, I can score myself and give myself the proper number point. And look here, I am showing you, please use a pencil. I was using a Sharpie so that you can see me. I am going to now go and actually cut my coil so it is the proper size. You can't tell from the video, but what's going to happen is I'm going to take the needle tool and I am going to slice at a diagonal through this clay. Okay, so I'm going a sawing motion back and forth and I'm going at a diagonal. Why do I go at a diagonal? So that I get a bigger surface area when I'm trying to connect those two pieces together. So when I'm doing a small piece like a coil, if I go at a diagonal, I get a bigger surface area. The next step is scoring, and what I'm going to show you here is you could use a needle tool to do your scoring if for whatever reason you don't have access to our larger scoring tools. It just takes more energy. You would do diagonal scores with your needle tool, but that's not quite enough. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to kind of cross hatch here, which is going diagonal the other direction. And I even like to do a third, which is going horizontally across those. Now, of course, you can score with a needle tool, but I prefer our scoring tool that we have in the classroom, which has about 8 wires. You do need to have a decent pressure, and you do need to get some nice grooves in there. I'm also going to do the ends of my coils. I actually prefer the needle tool when I'm doing a small surface like that to do my scores, all right? And so I will do that cross-hatching technique. I'm not mushing that together. I'm just showing you that I'm keeping that as a circle. I did not do any mushing. I'm going to score the surface of the coil that I'm going to lay onto the lip. So whenever you're attaching clay, one piece to another, any two surfaces that are going to be joined together need to have scores. I'm back to my check sheet. I'm reading everything and making sure I do it, then checking it off. What I was reading next says that after the scoring, I need to add slip or water. I like our containers because we keep some water towards the top. That's a little bit slippy. And then we have more of the thicker slip towards the bottom. If your bowl has dried out, you definitely want more of the water to seep into those grooves and let it soften up a little bit. So I've done a little bit of the water and then a little bit more of the thicker slip. And then I'm going to go over the top of my coil and do the same. I did speed up the video a bit. You don't want it to get crazy, kind of runny, but you do need to have a nice coverage there. Next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to show you a nice example here, is just a gentle wiggle, right? That wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Take those two grooved sections that have slip on them and wiggle them. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the coil on the bowl itself. And I've turned it to its side, and I've slowed down the video a little bit to show you that it's just this gentle pressure with a little wiggle, and you're going to see this slip kind of oozing out. So kind of take your time when you're doing this. Obviously, it's a little bit slower than what I was doing it, but it's pretty daggone close to the amount of speed I was doing because you do not want to ruin your coil, You spent time making a coil for a reason. So I am go ahead and attaching. Where my coil attached to itself, I seem to have kind of a little divot. So what I did was I grabbed a little bit of clay, I rolled it into a small coil, added some slip, scored the section, and now I'm blending it right in gently. All right, so I did score, I did slip. Anytime I want to add two pieces of clay together, I'm still going to do that process. Okay, before I move on with anything, I went to double check my check sheet, and it said the inside needs to be smoothed, but the outside I have to retain the coil shape. Now, your finger might do the job, or you might find out that you got to use another tool. So there is no perfect tool. That's your job to figure out which one works for you. For me, it's always I try one, then I'm probably going to use my finger a little bit, then try a different tool. But your goal is not to see the line where the coil is attached on the inside. All right, so we're kind of learning and perfecting the two techniques with this here, which is I have a coil that I've attached just to add height, so I don't want to see it and I want it all blended out. And then on the outside, I want to perfect the technique of I added a coil and I actually want to see the coil because I added it for the decorative purposes. And so on the outside, we're going to do a slightly different technique. On the outside, I don't want to get rid of the line that was created when I added the coil. However, I want to kind of clean it up. I don't want to add in a line that's forced in. So sometimes what I'll see is somebody's taken a tool and they've redrawn the line in. I don't really want you to redraw the line in. I want you to just make sure that where that coil meets the bowl, that that attachment is done well and that they didn't totally blend together so that we lost the curve of the coil. So you want the nice curve of the coil and you want a nice attachment. And so it's just really you're kind of smoothing out the bowl and your finger is right there in between the two. If you find you need to use a tool instead, use a tool instead. Here's where we're at, and you're going to see a lot of speeding up for the video for the next minute or so, is you're just in the perfecting stage of your bowl. It's as if you were making a pinch pot and hadn't added on this top coil. Your goal would always be make sure that the lip is 1/4 of an inch thick, a consistent thickness, to make sure that it's level, to make sure that the inside is smooth. So what you're seeing now is, yes, I added on a coil to the top, but it's still a pinch pot. I still want it to be a perfected lip on my pinch pot. I just happen to add a coil that add height to it and add a decorative element to it. And as always, you're going to check your scoring tool. What I'm noticing is that I do still see a little bit of the line on the inside. So I gave myself a little underline there, knowing I'm going to have to come back and maybe take off a point or two or fix it if I have time. I did do a pretty good job on the outside. There, see, I gave myself a whole check mark on keeping that lid coil shape good. And I did do a pretty good job with keeping a circular shape. I feel pretty good about that. And on the width, I've done okay. There's a little couple divots, and if I wanted to, I could score and do some slip and add some clay in. So I'm just going to take off a few points for those and score myself up. But remember, scores are nice, but great bowls are better. So take your time and enjoy.